Good morning. This conversation this morning is on cord cutting and attachment release. And I think that this is an important conversation because I have been posting about the new moon solar eclipse in Aquarius and the Chinese New Year, um, the year of the fire horse, coming up on February 17th. And then we're on the heels of the spring equinox coming up in March. And so astrologically, there is a lot of change energy that is going to allow for renewal, allow for newness, allow for new beginnings. There's this energy that is going to support you making space, mentally, physically, emotionally, for new beginnings, which means that we have to be okay with things ending. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about cord cutting because it is a service that I've done with people over the years under shadow work. And I thought it was a good time to be able to bring it back to the forefront more than anything. Typically, if we get to the point of cord cutting, it's because someone has come to me for some shadow work. There's some one-to-one work that they want to do to get rid of something, to release something, to process something. And at one point during the shadow work, the conversation comes up around cord cutting and how to release whatever they've been holding on to. And so I typically don't have that as I haven't typically had that as a menu item on my service menu because I wanted people to understand the level of work that comes with cord cutting. Now, I'm going to talk a bit about what that service looks like with me. With different practitioners, things can vary. So, by no means should you listen to this conversation and think that the way that I'm proposing that I do it is the only way to accomplish any cord cutting. This is what it would look like working with me. So, very much this is a service where I integrate my spiritual gifts and my clinical gifts. So that way you feel more at peace with your decision of release. So, just kind of going back to the basics of cord cutting and attachments. There's this idea that when we come into this is like the spiritual kind of metaphysical side. There's this idea that when we come into the world, we have energetic cords that are basically kind of karmic, that we have these energetic cords that connect us to others, right? So these cords can connect us to our fractal twins, our soulmates, our soul's mates, all of those things. Good morning to everybody that is joining live. Feel free to ask questions or chat with me in the chat link. So there's this idea that we come into this life already on a path with a purpose and with a trajectory that's kind of predestined and predetermined. And then there's a portion of our life that is lived through free will, experience, making decision. And that there are these cords that attach us to others that are linked karmically to what our life's purpose is. These aren't always lovers. People like to romanticize that idea with adding it to being lovers, but this can be friendships. I give the example all the time. I feel like Chloe and Haley, I feel like they're soulmates and they're sisters, right? And so we have this space where we've come into this life with these folks, and life happens, right? And so everything doesn't always happen on the predestined trajectory. Things occur because we're constantly on a crash course collision, basically, with other people and their free will. And sometimes their free will exerts a force over what we were supposed to do, and it kind of, changes the trajectory of how we're moving. And so there are times when people who are your soul's mates, they cannot complete, whatever task you guys came here to do. They can't complete it because things have occurred in their life. Life was life in. And sometimes we have to cut cords. That's one example. We have to release that attachment to that person, that link to that person. There are other times where we consciously or subconsciously create the attachment to the person. And so maybe this is somebody that is more of a karmic relationship. There was just like, it was just a lesson to be learned through this person, and you weren't supposed to keep them on or make them VIP or hold them any longer past the season they were supposed to be in your life. And so then an energetic attachment is created that needs to be unplugged. And so we have the idea, and that's just really, really basic, really, really elementary. Look at this. But there's this idea that sometimes we have to, cut that cord, sever it, release it. Same thing works with ideas and belief systems. It's not enough to just say, oh, I don't believe that anymore. You have to really do the work to uproot that, to bring it to the surface and really clear it. And so there's a large percentage of the work that I've done with people with cord cutting where they had to release old belief systems. So great example of that is, our family of origin helps to create and implement our earliest belief systems, where that can create conflict, internal conflict for people, is that sometimes those family of origin belief systems are in direct conflict with your soul and what you are designed to do. And so you have to release those things, because those beliefs really just, like, you get to a point as you enter into adulthood where you're like, that just really doesn't resonate with me. That I don't feel that at a soul level. This is not something that I want to practice. And so you have to do the work to release those things that were just kind of embedded into you, those things that you heard all the time. So a great example of this is like, if you grow up in a household that's very superstitious, at some point you have to be able to release some of those superstition. I remember a big one my grandmother had was about not standing up and eating. She was like, oh, if you stand up and eat, it'll make your house poor. I mean, I started researching the origin of superstitions and myths and what that looked like. And a good majority of them was, if you do this, you'll be poor. If you do this, you will have bad luck. The reality is people's financial situations have a lot to do with their socioeconomic status and what's going on in the world around them, not because they were standing and eating something. And then, I looked at that realistically. There are places that you go for networking with mixing and mingling, and you have to stand and eat a light bite. And there are rich people in those rooms. So you have to release some of those things that you kind of grew up with. And so that's another space of like cord cutting and attachment release. Everything doesn't always have to do with intimate love relationships, but that's how we tend to try to kind of romanticize things. And so with us, when you practice with me, we do practice through astrology. I do incorporate astrology in there. And so, solar eclipse season, that's a great time to release. Work coming towards the full moon, that's a great time to release. Those are great times to just kind of mark a space where it's time to just kind of let go of certain things. You realize like that doesn't work for me anymore. That mindset, I needed that during a certain period of time for maybe self-preservation or what have you. Where these things come up with intimate relationships are when people get to a point where it's like, well, I've been dating for X amount of years and I figure out I'm dating the same type of person, or I always have the same type of outcome. I tend to have the same type of outcome. And so we ultimately say, with that self-reflection, how do I want to release that, right? Because I want to do something different. So the idea with cord cutting and attachment release is the understanding that you are letting go of something. And in that ending, in that release, in that letting go, you also can create more space for the thing that you actually need. And so one of the things that I think is really important, that I really stress in cord cutting and attachment release when you're working with me, is that there's like open and close, open and close. There has to be a complete circuit. When we work in the therapeutic realm, you open the session, but then you also close the session. You don't bring a person to a point where they're opening things up and then you just end it. You have to close things safely, right? You have to complete the entire circuit. Same thing kind of happened a couple years ago. What was it? Sephora was selling tarot cards and people were just going to get tarot cards. And it's like, people were just pulling cards everywhere and doing all. It's like, no, there's a ritualistic aspect to how to do that correctly. You got to open things and then you got to close things, right? With Reiki, there's like an element of opening and saying Reiki is beginning. And then there's an element of closing where you say, like you show appreciation, we bow, we hold our hands in gasho. It's like, I came, I did the work, I got the t-shirt, I'm done. We have to look at cord cutting and attachment release in that way. So that's super important too. So with the work that I end up doing, we go through a couple different sessions. I do ask people to commit to at least 3 sessions, and here's why. First session, we are going to, make sure that we talk, we understand the extent of the attachment. We got to understand what's even going on. A lot of times, by the time people come for cord cutting and attachment work, they're very uncomfortable. They're there because something makes them uncomfortable. And so what we can't do is be reactive and just remove the discomfort. If you just do it that way, and you don't understand the psyche behind how we got here, you'll go do it again. And so a huge amount of the shadow work that I do around this revolves an amount of divination, where we're going to actually see and look at spiritually the depth of what is happening in that relationship where you want to sever the cord, the depth of the attachment that was possibly created, and just knowing that um, certain links have more depth, right? And so if the link comes with more karmic debt, there's more work to do to release it. If it's simply an attachment that you created, some type of skewed bond or something, there's a space where we can just kind of unplug it like a lamp, excuse me, and begin to do the work of moving on so we don't just go plugging in everywhere. Um, and so we do an amount of divination. And that can look different for everybody. Sometimes it's pendulum work, sometimes it is oracle work. Um, Sometimes it's using your natal chart to look at where things like just keep popping up, right? And then there's a portion of it that is based in talk therapy, um, where we actually discuss, if it's an attachment to something stemming from childhood, we have to discuss that a bit. Um, if it is a pattern of things that you've created in your adulthood, we need to see it and acknowledge it so we can break the pattern. And so there's an element of talk therapy. As a somatic practitioner, we do incorporate that in as well. So there may be some breath work um, involved. There may be some somatic movement. Maybe there are things that you've been holding on to that are buried in your body: anger, resentment, frustration, embarrassment regarding these beliefs that may need to be removed or the cords that need to be cut. So we may need to do some somatic movement to uproot it out of the body. I do give many homework assignments. There are journal prompts, because as these things erupt, I want you guys to think about them, brain dump, release it. And I may give you some prompts to think about in between sessions. Um, and so there's actual mental work that goes into that, because I want you to release confidently and not just reactively, right? When we release with a sense of peace of mind with our decision, we're less likely to go back to doing that thing again. And we're more likely to want to create a healthier space for us to move into, right? Because that's the other thing that kind of happens. People want to run away from something to get away from the discomfort, which, I mean, it makes sense, right? It's like, oh, I don't want to be there anymore. But where do you want to be? What does it need to look like? We already know what the dysfunctional stuff was. Let's build a fertile ground to moving forward to doing something that's better so we don't go back here again. So that's also an element that's included too. You have your toolkit, and so you're able to create some things that you can come back to, reflect back on. We also do record the sessions so you can have the recording and play it back. And then another portion of some of the other sessions is the actual ritual work. Maybe there's a soul contract that you need to break. And so we need to write one soul contract, giving gratitude for the situation, giving gratitude for the acknowledgement of the situation. We may need to burn that or use water or use any of the elements to release ourselves from that contract. And then we have to write another one that says, moving forward, this is where I agree, I touch and agree. for my soul to be. That part is super important because we open and then we close. We have to close out the old energy and lead ourselves to what is new. And so we'll work on the ritual for that. If there's any ritual work that I want you to do at home, I'll give you a list of those things to do. There may be some somatic movement I want you to do. There may be some journal prompts. There may be some candle work. There's a lot of different things that, and this is super individualized. Everybody's stuff isn't going to be the same. And then I usually have you check back in a couple weeks later because I want you to apply that knowledge. What do you do if that person calls? Because energetically they can feel the cord being cut. What do you do if that person calls? How do you handle that? How do you handle your brain going back to like factory default settings where this attachment of ideas is concerned, or this attachment to people, a specific person or persons? How do you deal with that when your brain goes back to factory default settings, what you're used to doing, and then you don't, stick it to yourself for backsliding? It's just like, okay, this is human experience. I have these tools that I can use. I can continue to move forward. So we work on all of those things where cord cutting is concerned. Yes, according to the moon cycle, there may be specific days that are better for certain things, but I feel like with the amount of work that we do, I feel like I don't like to make people feel too overwhelmed with specifics like that. But yes, it is super important for us to be able to feel grounded, feel connected. And so we work through that work at any time. We don't necessarily, like if you come to me and you want to schedule something, I don't say, hey, we got to wait till the waning, waxing moon to do something. I do, every once in a while have somebody who is more progressed and they're like, oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna do this work near the new moon and check back in with you. Totally cool. Or I've had a couple times where people were just like, I want to do this work near the lunar eclipse and come back. That works just fine. That's personal preference, but we can do this work at any time because I always feel like planetary action and just the energy that you have, like, I don't want people to feel like they have to wait for something when they feel like they're ready. If you feel like you're ready and you took a big step to initiate wanting to do any cord cutting work, I want you to get started when you feel ready and you feel encouraged. Some of the big things I like people to look forward to after doing some of the cord cutting and the attachment release work is just the understanding that sometimes the things that we were linked to, it's out of habit. And so we have to create other habits that are more healthy. And the other thing is, excuse me, I want people to understand that it is your work. I know that there are practitioners out there that are like, we will use our magic, we will use metaphysical means to be able to cut the cord for you. And you kind of tap in, they do the work, and they may give you something else on the back end. I'm not saying that doesn't work because it does work in lots of situations. I like a good fixed candle. I do. But there's work that has to actually go with it, so you're not returning to the very thing that you say that you want to get rid of. And a lot of times we don't realize how deep, the thoughts have gone, how deep the habits are. And so that's why the cord cutting work and the shadow work with me looks the way that it does. Um, so just wanted to add these things, to this conversation because people have been coming to me asking um, about cord cutting work and attachment release. And like I said, I'm adding it back to my schedule, um, my schedule of services, especially in light of the fact that we have the Chinese New Year coming up, the year of the fire horse. I've done a write up about that, and the new moon solar eclipse in Aquarius, and then we're right here peaking at the spring equinox coming up. So lots of time to just kind of like clear stuff out, acknowledge some things. That solar eclipse is about like shining light on truth, and things that are in the dark come into light. Um, and I think, as always, when we're able to work on ourselves, that adds to the powerful strength of the collective. It's like the individuals kind of get things together, like Voltron is stronger, the whole collective thing is stronger. And so I do definitely encourage people to just, even in these chaotic times, try to focus on yourself, not selfishly, but focus on yourself and the things that you need to nourish yourself. Um, and that's the other idea with this cord cutting and attachment release at this time. Let go of whatever is weighing you down right now, because the world is heavy enough. It's heavy enough. And I feel like people should do their best to maintain their peace of mind. And it's just a constant state of upheaval right now. And so if you're kind of in a place where you're like, things are crazy, I want to just purge. Like if your soul is calling you to just kind of like purge and release some things, answer that calling. Totally answer that calling. You can do cord cutting and attachment release as often as you need to. Um, just to release. And like I said, we do some somatic work as well, included in all of this. So I think, it's always time to do energy work. I think it's always time to do somatic work. Um, I think it's always okay to just kind of check in with yourself and take inventory when needed, and then move on and apply knowledge. So if you have questions, if you have any um if you have any other things that you want to discuss, if any of this resonated, I'm going to put the link here in the comments where you guys can follow me if you hopped on here for the live. And when this stream actually posts on the YouTube channel, I'll make sure to have um, all of the links in the comments where you guys can come back and share and continue with me in this conversation. So thank you so much to everybody that joined in live. And if you are coming back and listening to the replay, message me and let me know what resonates.